Have you ever caught yourself being like, telling people like, hey, I'm fine, I'm totally good, when in reality, you know deep down that's like a mask you're wearing. You're covering up the exhaustion that you actually feel underneath, but you feel like you need to show up in a way that appears that you've got it all together, right? That you're fine in that moment. Yeah, if so, I want to help unpack that with you today, because I know that parents, entrepreneurs, people who are working away 9 to 5 trying to provide for those closest to them, this is something that happens all the time. And so if that's any sort of an experience you've had, then this is going to be the video you're going to want to dive deep into. Now, I know that I spent years telling people like hey, I'm fine, I'm good, I've got it. Like on the outside, like it did look like I had it all together, being confident in business, that I always had a plan, being a strong dad who never cracked, being a reliable friend who could carry it all. But the truth was, like, I was actually dying inside. Every version of me was so polished for the people around me, but the real me never made it to the surface. And that's, what I'm hoping you can take, because like I want you to learn from my mistake. That mask that I thought was protecting me was actually suffocating me. The energy I was burning trying to keep up the appearances, like could not have been like, I could have used in other places, right? I could have been building better relationships with people closest to me, kind of relationships that are real and honest and actually give more life back and more energy back into me. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, because I think there's a lot you could take from it. I think every one of us at some point wrestles with, this exhaustion, wearing that mask every single day that we're fine. So I want to cover that with you, but also how you finally have the courage to let the people around you see the real you, even if it is tired. And so let me I like to start my videos by, if you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, welcome to the Giver Method channel. My name is Jake. I'm so glad you're able to join me today. Now, let me ask you something real quick. A couple of questions to help ground this for the conversation. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained because you spent the whole time performing, right? You were smiling, you were nodding, you're pretending like you had it all together, while on the inside you feel like you were falling apart. Or have you ever felt like you're like suffocating under all the pressure of keeping up that image, terrified that if anyone actually saw through the cracks, like they'd respect you less, they'd think less of you, or maybe they'd walk away, they'd want to not be involved in any sort of way. I mean, if that's true, if any of that hits home for you, then let me just say, like, hear me this, like, you're not weak. You're not failing, and you're definitely not alone in those feelings. What you're feeling is that fatigue that comes from wearing that mask, an exhaustion that just comes from splitting yourself between different versions of you in every context until the true version of you barely has room to breathe. For a parent, it might look like you're trying to be composed and unshakable parent for all 24 hours of the day, but you're hiding your doubts because you think that showing them to those closest to you would somehow, break things, or your kids would look at you differently, or whatever that may be. Entrepreneur, it's like that constant need to be the visionary, who never admits that there's fear or concern involved there, even though like the weight of it all keeps you up at night. Or maybe you're an employee and it's the pressure to look like the bulletproof professional, right? Never asking for help, terrified of being honest about your limits, will maybe cost you your job or a shot at some sort of like promotion or advancement. Now, what most people miss, authenticity doesn't weaken your role as a parent, as a leader, as a professional. It actually strengthens it, because you show up as the real you, with your humanity and all those stinking struggles you have and the courage to just keep going. You actually give other people the permission to do the same when you do that. So let's unpack this. Like I mentioned, my name is Jake Talbert. In case you haven't noticed, I'm author, founder of this book. It's called The Giver Method. It is on Amazon, and right now it's available for as little as $1.99. So I'll put a link in the description where you can go get it. It's becoming an Amazon bestseller since it came out. Everything we're talking about today is going to be grounded in some of the principles within here. And what's great is that it's designed for people like you and me, people who are crazy busy. I've got 3 boys. I run a business. I've been in that corporate atmosphere in the sea of cubicles. So everything in here, the stories, the action items, exercises, they're all designed to fit for people like you and to show up in the life that you're already living as a part of that. And like, I'll never forget, like I said, these types of moments when they hit me after, I had it was a brutally tough meeting, and I had someone that I was working with look at me, they're like, Jake, like, you don't have to have all the answers right now. Like, we're figuring this out together. And like, it was in an instant, like I realized like I'd been wasting so much energy. I was trying so hard in this hard moment, in this meeting, to look like I had it all together. I was wasting so much energy trying to look invincible to my team. But what they needed was like honesty and leadership, through that uncertainty. And the thing that I thought would maybe weaken me actually made me stronger in their eyes, because I was willing to be like, guys, we're figuring this out too. We're on our way. There's tons of data and research I do as a part of these videos and as I write the book, and some of that data out there shows that like vulnerability is where like it's the birthplace for courage or creativity, and for you to change, right? The different things that they're showed that juggling different personas across the context that you have in life or the roles that you're playing, it eats up 67% of your mental energy, more than if you just showed up as your whole self. So no wonder you're feeling tired. And the truth that started to change things is like the people you're trying to protect with your mask, they actually crave the exact same authentic connection that you are. They want your courage, they want you to give from that place of authenticity, not from a place of performing. And so today I'm going to walk you through these like 6 strategies that I've come up with that help move you from exhaustedness in performance to being way more energized through authenticity. And once again, these aren't fluff or woo ideas. They're like real frameworks for parents and entrepreneurs and employees that are ready to start dropping those masks and without losing some sort of effectiveness. In fact, like they're discovering that, people who do this, like that their authentic selves are way more valuable to others than like the perfect act that they were putting on that whole time. And just to be clear, we're not talking about like oversharing or dumping all raw emotion. Like it's about recognizing that the energy you're wasting, keeping up those appearances, can be directed to real connection, meaningful connection and relationships built on trust and not on performance. Everything we covered today, like I said, it's going to be in the Giver Method book. You can get yourself access to it by going to Amazon, using the link in the description. Pause the video now, pull up your Amazon app, look for the Giver Method by Jake Talbert. Now, if you're tired of carrying this weight alone and you want some support, someone to help walk you down the road that maybe they've walked down that road before as well, check out the link below about coaching. We have some spots open in our one-on-one coaching program, and take a look at those. It might be something that makes sense for you to do. And then if you have a team or a community or a podcast or some sort of way that people, an event, whatever, that this message could resonate with them, let's talk about what it could look like to bring it to them. And of course, before we dive too deep, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications. Ring the bell, of course, for that. Like the video, and what else? Comment your thoughts along the way. I do read every one of them, and I love to modify content as I go, based off the comments that people give. So with that, let's dive in and talk about how to finally stop pretending, stop performing everything, acting like everything's fine. Start living from freedom to be yourself. And so the first area I want to focus on is spotting the personas that actually drain you the most. So like this is your mask check-in. You and I both know, like we all wear different masks depending on where we are. At work, maybe it's the got it all together professional. At home, maybe it's the patient parent mode. With friends, it's the strong one who never needs help. Like while some of those roles are natural and maybe align with our gifts and superpowers, others are just flat exhausting. And the first step is to figuring out which one of those masks are quietly sucking the life out of you, and not to judge yourself, but to finally see it clearly. Where those energy leaks, because like once you find them, you can plug them and you start building yourself back up. And so what you want to do, grab yourself a piece of paper, and what I want you to do is I want you to map out different versions of yourself that you tend to play. So it could be things like, hey, at work, I'm the breakable, unflappable professional, whatever. At home, I'm the perfect parent. I'm the whatever. And with friends, I'm always available. I'm the support system. And then now I want you to rate each mask on a couple different scales. So think of it this way: there's going to be the energy cost. How much it takes out of you to keep up that mask, or does it recharge you to keep up that mask? And then the second thing I want you to grade it off of is authenticity level. How close it feels to the real you. The ones that you score high on the energy and low on authenticity, like, gosh, those are probably your biggest drains. Pay attention to them. Pay attention to the transitions too. Like when you shift from like the calm boss in a meeting to patient parent in the carpool line to supportive partner at home, like each switch eats up mental and emotional bandwidth. So the more that you're having to change who you are in those scenarios, it's eating you alive. And so like that's why you're like crawling into bed at night completely drained, even if like nothing really big happened that day. But when you can perform from a place of authenticity, I'm just showing up as who I am in each of these scenarios, you keep that energy. You're able to place it into more appropriate places. And then finally, you can ask yourself, like, what am I scared will happen if I drop the mask? Well, people think I'm incompetent or that I'm weak or selfish. And the truth is, those fears are usually way bigger in your head than in reality. Because you can't change what you can't, like all of this, you can't change what you can't admit, what you can't find and say, like, that's what it is. That's where the problem is. Once you see where your energy is actually going, you can make intentional choices to, about which masks you want to keep, which ones you want to loosen. And that's the beginning of living and leading from your authentic self, like instead of from some sort of a like performance mode. Now that takes us into the second area that I want to focus on, which is finding your safe, like people to practice being real with. And think about it this way, like you always want to start small. And because you don't have to like rip off every mask all at once. In fact, like that's a recipe for probably a panic attack. The smarter, healthier move is to start small. Start with the people in places where it already feels a little safer to be yourself. So think about it, like who are the maybe 2 or 3 people in your life who you've proven can handle the real version of you? Maybe it's a friend who, who's admitted their own struggles over coffee. Maybe it's that sibling who never judged you, or the colleague who feels more like a teammate than a competitor. These are going to be like your safe people. Like that's who you're looking for. And once you have them in mind, run a few like authenticity experiments. Nothing dramatic, nothing crazy, just small, honest moments. Like instead of saying like, "Hey, I'm fine," when you're not, try being honest and being like, "Hey, honestly, today it's been kind of rough," or instead of pretending that you've got it all figured out, like in your work or whatever, like try like, "Hey, I don't know the answer yet, but hey, I'm gonna figure it out. Or can we work together to figure that out?" Or asking for support instead of carrying everything alone can just drastically change things for you. And here's what usually happens. The world doesn't end when you give these like sample experiments. In fact, the opposite. People lean into it. They thank you for being real. They start opening up about their own stuff. They suddenly, like, you realize your fear about being maybe rejected for your honesty, like that was all just a lie. It was a lie to yourself, So you want to graduate into authenticity. You don't have to, unload your deepest shame or trauma right out the gate. Like that's a recipe for disaster. Start with everyday honesty, the simple kind of truths that are small but real, and keep a track record of like, hey, when I dropped the mask, things actually got better. And pay attention to those, because every one of those sort of small wins that goes with that, when you feel that relief in your chest, when you see the people that, respect you more because you're being real, like that's evidence. And that's how you like retain your brain to just, hey, I'm gonna train everything, my system to trust the authenticity. Because like once you've got a few safe spaces where you feel be able to practice some of this, you can start carrying with more confidence in some of the higher stake areas of your life, and you really begin to shift things. Now that's going to take us to that third area, the third strategy I want to focus on, which is how to be real without losing respect. Like, so there's the two it's often referred to, I've heard it referred to as like the 2-window rule, because the scariest parts of dropping these masks is that nagging like deep thought or feeling of like, hey, if I admit I'm struggling, people are going to think I'm weak or incompetent or unprofessional, that I'm not, some imposter syndrome steps in, things like that. And honestly, that fear is what keeps most people like locked into this, like I'm putting on a show performance mode. And here's the truth. You can be real and still be effective. You just need to know how to share in ways that build trust instead of creating doubt. And that's where like, you use this 2-window rule thing, like this concept. So think of it this way. Every time that you share something authentically, you open 2 windows at the same time. Window number 1 is humanity. Like what's true for you right now. And then window 2, it opens up is the direction. It's what you're doing about it, or like where you're headed next because of that. When you put those 2 things together, people see like both your humanness and your strength, and that combo actually builds trust rather than like that pretending would never be able to do. And so let's go through some examples I wrote down that kind of show you what that looks like in real life. At work, instead of faking certainty, you might be like, hey, here's what I know so far, and here's what I'm still figuring out, and here's my plan to have the answers for you by Friday. Like, gosh, that's way more helpful and believable than pretending that you've got it nailed. At home, it might sound like, hey, I'm having a rough day. I need just like some 20 minutes of rest. Like that's the humanity. After that, like I'm all yours, for whatever, for bedtime stories or whatever you're going to do. Once again, it's real, it's honest, and it still shows like you're still showing up for the people who matter most to you. Like, notice what's happening. You're not dumping like unprocessed emotions on people. Like, you're not offloading all the stress without any sort of context. You're just modeling how to navigate real life, how to admit when things aren't perfect, and while also taking responsibility for what happens next. Now, let me tell you, when you do this, people don't lose respect for you. They actually will gain it. And the reason why is because like they finally get to see you being human and being competent, that you can live, at the same time as a part of that. Like that's far more inspiring than any sort of fake perfection could ever be. That takes us into our the fourth area. How you share what's true without oversharing. This is a big part in the Giver method. The E is all about eager engagements, and it's like, well, cool. How do we make it that we don't overshare? Let's be real but not reckless, I guess is the best way of looking at it. Because something that I want to make sure is really clear. Authenticity doesn't mean that you go around sharing everything to everyone all the time. That's not real, that's reckless. True authenticity, like, it's about knowing when to share, how much to share, and who it's safe to share with. And when you get this right, it can be one of the most powerful tools that you have. It builds trust, it creates some way stronger connections, and actually makes you more efficient in the roles that you have, not less efficient. And so here's what that looks like in real life. At work, you don't need to tell the whole team about the argument you had with your spouse last night, but you could say, hey, here's what I know. Here's what I'm still figuring out. And here's my plans of what I'm going to do next. Once again, be honest. Professional keeps doors open to collaboration. With your kids, they don't need to know the weight of every adult problem, and they don't need that just dropped on them. But they do benefit from when you say, like, hey, I had a long day and I'm feeling really tired. I'd love to play. Like, I still do want to play. For like, I'll play a game with you for a few minutes, but like, I also need to get some mental space, some brain space. Once again, you're modeling honesty and presence in ways that teaches them healthy emotional awareness. A trusted friend or mentor is like that, where you can go deeper on these things. You can admit your doubts and fears and struggles that you don't show at work in front of, colleagues or in front of your kids. Like, these safe spaces are where your like process, like, this is where you can recharge and remind yourself of, you don't have to carry it all alone. So, like, there's that like bounded, vulnerability. Before you share something, you ask yourself, am I sharing this to create a connection, to add value, or invite support? Or am I just dumping stress with no direction? The first strengthens relationships. The second usually leaves everyone feeling really drained. Now, here's the really cool part. Like, when you start practicing authenticity in a way that fits the context, like, gosh, you actually give others permission to be real too. Your honesty, like, it opens these doors where others get to be honest. And suddenly you've got a culture where, whether it's at home or at work, where people don't have to perform all the time. Because it proves that being genuine doesn't have to compromise the effectiveness, right? It amplifies it. Like, people are going to respect you more when they see you being the real you, expressed wisely, than when you're trying to hold up some sort of perfect image of yourself. Now, that's going to take us into our next one, which is like how to bounce back after being real. Because vulnerability can be heavy. So this is all about that idea of like, there's a vulnerability hangover cure sort of a thing. Like, being real isn't always followed by some sort of standing ovation. Sometimes, like, after you share something really honest, you wake up the next day, with that sinking feeling of like, man, did I say too much? Or do I need to, do they see me differently now? Should I have kept that to myself? Like, things like that. And so that's that idea of, I borrowed that term, vulnerability hangover, right? Because it's a real thing. It's as if you were hungover just from being vulnerable. Like, now here's the good news that I do know. Like, it doesn't mean that you messed up. It just means that you stretch yourself a little bit. You tried something new. It's like going to the gym and you try to lift weights. Your muscles are going to ache the next day. At least that's what I'm told. I'm not a gym person. Not because you damaged them, but because you're actually getting stronger. And vulnerability works the same way. That discomfort is just like emotional muscles being strengthened. So here's what you could do. Like, here's how you work through it or deal with that feeling the next day. So, like, name what it is. Be real. Instead of like spiraling, like that feeling of like, did I ruin things? Tell yourself like this, like, hey, it stretched me a bit, right? Discomfort means growth, not danger. Be kind to yourself about it. Like, instead of over analyzing it, like, hey, think about it. It's like, hey, I was courageous. Like, and I honored myself and the other person I was being real with. And not a weakness. Like, that was strength on display. And then, like, phone in like a reality check friend. Like, have one or two people that you trust that you give honest feedback. Like, not the kind just it's like, hey, I'm fine or whatever. Like, but the kind that reminds you of the truth. Like, that's, you're being authentic. Like, I'm looking for ways that I could share. I shared this thing and here's what I experienced. Now you're being vulnerable again. You're being authentic. It creates way more connection. And then, like, reflect, don't ruminate. Reflection sounds like, hey, what I learned, or, how could I share even better next time? Rumination is like, oh, I ruined everything, or what do they think of me now? Like, one's going to move you forward, one's going to feel like you're being trapped and make you not want to grow. And then keep the wins folder, right? Sometimes, anytime someone asks, maybe thanks you for being real or opens up in return, like, it shows that deeper trust and honesty. Like, write it down or take a screenshot or save it. Like, pull it back out when this sort of a feeling hits. So, like, to remind yourself that authenticity builds, like, it doesn't break any part of you, because if you learn how to ride vulnerability, like, and pass that sort of a hangover phase, like, you'll be able to, we want you to retreat back to that mask of I'm fine. Like that's where exhaustion is going to live. But if you realize, like, hey, it's just a part of the growth process, you don't run from it. You lean into it, because on the other side of that leaning, like, is better connections, stronger trust, and freedom to just keep it real. Now that takes us to the sixth and final area, which is, like, leading by being real. Becoming the permission giver for people, because when you start showing up more authentically, you don't just change your life, it changes the room. Any room you walk into, it changes your family, it changes your team. Your authenticity can be contagious. If you think about it, that's when you stop performing and you start being the real you. You're basically giving everyone else that silent permission to do the same. So think about it this way, like, as a parent, if you're at home, your kids don't need perfect, unshakable superhero. They need they need to see what it looks like to face challenges honestly and work through them with courage. When you say, like, hey, I had a tough day, but here's how I worked through it, you're teaching them resilience. You're showing them that strength isn't just about never struggling, it's about how you show up in the middle. And at work, like, as a leader or a professional, when you can admit that you don't have all the answers, you're still figuring it out in the same breath, like, gosh, suddenly it's safe for other people to do the same. And that you can have ways that shows up in your community. So think about it this way. Number one, show your process, not just the results, to people. So instead of sharing the highlight reel, show people, like, how you got there, the mistakes, the lessons, the pivots. Create connections, like rituals that you have, where, maybe it's at family dinner where everyone shares a win and maybe a struggle. Maybe it's team check-ins where you ask, like, hey, what's something that you're learning right now? Instead of, like, hey, what's going perfect? Tell your story to people. It makes such a big difference, because authenticity, it can scale. Your choice to be real doesn't just free you, it frees others. And over time, it builds families, teams, communities that aren't performing for each other, but they're real with each other, and building legacy together. Now, if we wrap this all up, here's what I want you to take away from today. Wearing that mask every day isn't just exhausting, it's draining energy and joy, and even your connections to the people who matter most to you. You end up splitting yourself into versions. You're performing for everyone, while the real you just sits in the background waiting to be let out. Now, the good news is you don't have to live like that anymore. The things we talked about today, they're not just tips about being more vulnerable. They're actually a roadmap out of the performance mode, so that you can get back to the life that actually feels like you. We want you to realize that your true self, it actually, can be way more vulnerable than the perfect act can ever be. Like, you're going to show up way more as you and make better connections. And the truth that flips things is, like, the people you've been trying to protect with your mask, like, they're often craving the exact same thing. They want real connection. They, when you go first, when you drop the act, when you show up with humanity, you give them permission to do the same. That's where relationships stop feeling like performances and they feel like true partnerships with each other. Now, that's going to be like the heartbeat of what I have in the Giver Method book. Like, your gifts and strengths aren't meant to be locked up in some sort of persona, waiting for the right time. They're meant to flow out of you in very real and authentic ways. So when you stop trying to impress and you start being more present, then you'll discover, like, what authenticity doesn't make you weaker. It makes you someone that people can finally connect with and trust and follow. So once again, if that hits home for you, go grab yourself a copy on Amazon. The link is in the description. Get yourself a copy of the Giver Method. If you're sitting there thinking, like, Jake, I've been wearing this mask for too long, I don't remember what it's even like to do like that by myself, then check out the coaching link below. Might make sense for you to have someone walk alongside with you. And I love to bring this message to organizations or community stages, events, podcasts, anyone where they feel like they've been pretending and they're ready for real connection. Then let's connect on how we could do that. And then before you go, please hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, like the video, of course, but comment like what you took away. I read them all. Tell me which of these strategies you're ready to really put into practice this week. And don't forget, like, your mask, it's not protecting you, like, it's not protecting anyone. It's actually blocking the real connection that you could be making for far too long. And the energy you've been spending keeping up appearances, that's the same energy that could be fueling real relationships and real impact and real freedom. So stop pretending everything's fine. Start showing up as the real you. That's where your real strength is. That's where your deepest connections live. And so with that, I'll just tell you to keep going with what you're doing. Keep working through things. Check out the other videos on the channel. Feel free to message me if there's thoughts or things that maybe you want to see in the future. With that, I'll just say have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll catch you in our next video.